know what that is?
What is that, Chris?
That's a drum roll. To get everybody fired up because it is Tour Pro Tuesday.
Tour Pro Tuesday.
This is our favorite day of the week because Jason and I, we love to geek out about watching golf swings and analyzing the best players in the world, what they do, because it's all very different and it's all stuff that we can learn from. But before we start talking about what we're going to do here today, I have some extraordinarily exciting news that comes from our beautiful butterfly, Jace Ranson. Jace, why don't you tell us about the news that you uncovered for me this past Saturday?
You know, Chris, this past Saturday I took and passed my final test to become a Class A PGA professional.
Absolutely fantastic. 22 years old and now a Class A member of the PGA of America. That's absolutely fantastic. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm excited.
You've worked very hard. I told you guys at home, I know how to put good people in my corner, and Jason's got a big, big future in the world of golf instruction. And today, Jason and I have decided that it is a perfect day to take a look at a golf swing that we've never looked at before here in the studio. It is a perfect day to recap on the Solheim Cup this past weekend where we saw a person, for the first time in U.S. history, go 4-0 as a rookie. Who was that, Jace?
Should we keep it a secret, or should we tell him now?
Just tell him who it was.
Rose Zhang.
Rose Zhang just went 4-0, and I think she's still in college.
Still in college.
She's still in college. She goes out there, just knocks out a 4-0, and then she's back in class knocking out biology or whatever. So congratulations to Rose. We love your golf swing. We love watching women's golf because everybody loves the tempo. Or there's some exciting stuff going on out there. We got Charlie Hall ripping darts out there and mucking it up with the crowd. Just a fantastic thing. Today we're going to talk about exactly what makes up Rose's DNA. We're going to talk about how she produces her speed and how she produces her control. You're going to see exactly how Jace, myself, or any other instructor that we have here at MyGolfDNA goes through the onboarding process when you sign up, because we want you to understand how we look at you and how we take everything into account before you start your adventure of getting better at the game of golf. Oh yeah, do me a big favor, head down below, subscribe real quick, hit that thumbs up button, and give Jace a shout out in the comments for us. Now, let's get to work. So the very first thing that I do, or any other instructor here at MyGolfDNA do, when you are onboarding with us and you are getting ready to start your adventure, is we look at your setup and we look at your grip very closely. Not to change things, but we look at your setup to get a better understanding of what release pattern you're going to start to fall into when it's all said and done. But that doesn't mean that that's going to be the end-all be-all. We have 3 blanket release strategies that we teach here at MyGolfDNA. We have the balanced, we have the hybrid, and we have the body aggressive release. We have to have an understanding of what release pattern that you fall into so that we can start looking at the rest of the swing shape to understand how you're going to be producing your speed and how you're going to be producing your control. And when we take a look at Rose's setup here, we're going to see that she's very neutral by today's standards. You're going to see that she has a left hand position here where it's up towards her right ear and her right hand is right up towards her right shoulder. So it's very neutralist by today's standards. So she's going to fall immediately into our balanced or our hybrid release pattern. Now the reason why I say that it could be one of those or the other is because it's very player dependent on how that person is going to be able to produce their speed and their control. Now we know that Rose is not a big person. She's 5'6" and 122 pounds max. And so she's going to have to work pretty hard to be able to produce the speed that she's looking for. And a lot of the speed really comes from the rotation and the leverage aspect. Think about leverage as being ground force and your ability to be able to maintain and preserve lag and release it. That's a big source of energy that does introduce a lot of timing to the swing shape. But a lot of her energy that she's going to make in her swing is going to come from rotation. She doesn't use a lot of horizontal force in her golf swing. It's not something that I'm going to knock. But when she starts taking away from horizontal force, she's going to have to add it back in to the other bucket, and that's rotation. And so when you look at things from a face-on perspective here up to the top of the golf swing, is that you're going to see that she turns right around 100 degrees or so. And she uses a very high hand and arm position in her golf swing. Now, what's the piece that allows a high hand position to be a good thing in the golf swing? Well, it allows you to create more width. But you have to understand that having a high hand and arm position also requires you to be a lot more patient for when the release is going to start in the golf swing. Think about this for a second. I get this question all of the time. When is the release supposed to start and what goes into my release? And the simple fact is, or the simple answer to that question is that the release is going to start when your hands and arms work down into what we call the speed zone. So when the hands and arms drop down below your belt line and they start to work in front of your trail thigh, that's what we call the speed zone. That's when the release should start to happen. Now, if you have a very high hand and arm position, then you've got a long time before your hands and arms start to get down in front of your body. So it does require a lot of patience, and it does require you to use a lot of rotation from your legs and your hips to be able to get the hands and arms fully down in front of your body. And that's something that Rose certainly has available to her. In fact, when we were measuring it the other day when we started looking at this swing, is she gets her hips open right in the ballpark of almost 70 degrees at the point of contact, which is something that I wouldn't advocate to an older player or somebody that lacks mobility. We can measure this by drawing a line on her feet, and then we can try to mirror what her hips look like. Yeah, she's really close to 70 degrees here. So you can see that her hip line is very much parallel to this line that's on the ground. 70 degrees is a lot, but she has to use that because, again, she borrowed from the horizontal department. You can see that she does use ground force. You can see that on the way down, she's going to lower her head just a slight amount. So here we are at the top. Head drops down ever so slightly. And then she pushes up out of the ground with that lead foot and lead hip, and then she releases the club in time. But because she had to rotate her hips open so much, I want you to look at her shoulder line. Her shoulder line is actually considered open, which would have her hand and arm path being slightly off to the left, which is not a bad thing because most people that are using our balanced release pattern, which is going to look very much like what you're about to see on the left-hand side of the screen, where you have a left wrist that's flat and pointed out in front of you. You have a left wrist that's now flat and pointed down the target line. And then you have a left wrist that's flat and pointed directly behind you in that short of space. That release pattern errs more to a draw bias. But we know that path is responsible for curvature. And so her rotating her hips open, yes, allows her to bring her hands fully down in front of her body to start the release. But it also offsets the path and neutralizes it for her so that she can release the club with a great deal of force and not have to worry about seeing big sling and draws. The point is that you have to have the correct amount of shaft lean to be able to offset the high rates of closure if you're going to have a balanced release pattern. You have to have an optimal swing plane and path, which is exactly what we worked on with our student this morning. We have to take that step in order to be able to build the swing shape, and it's impossible for you to know exactly what it's going to look like when it's all said and done. The hands or the wrists and the arms are considered variables. How much elevation, how much flexion. Those things are very much needing to be managed by a golf instructor that knows how to get you into positions and through positions in a very neutral sort of context. And that's exactly what you're going to learn later on in the week when we finish off the LSU drill. So today's video was more about teaching you how to kind of look at the golf swing objectively. We know that she took out horizontal force. We know that she had to substitute horizontal with rotational force. She uses a very high hand and arm position, which is not a bad thing. It just requires her to be patient. Most of you don't have the patience to allow the hands and arms to work fully down and in, and you'll start to throw the club way too early. The release will start when your hands and arms get down in the speed zone. How your hands and arms get down in the speed zone and where your body is critical to your success. We'll see you guys in the next video. Get ready to rock and roll on Friday. Have a wonderful day.